get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
This is so awesome.
We are an open culture that believes in importance of
What is that process that a developer, or let's say,
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you might be. You find yourself once again with the Level Up Hour, and we have a really great episode this week. We're going to be talking about dynamic console plugins for OpenShift. Have you ever wanted to customize your console in OpenShift? Apparently, if you have, you've got a lot of company, and to talk us through that, we have my co-host, Jafar Traibi. And we also have a guest. We have Serena Nichols, who is the Senior Principal Product Manager and Distinguished Engineer for the OpenShift Developer Experience. And so welcome, Serena. Greetings, Jafar. Again, everybody like, subscribe, and share so that people know we're here. And Jafar, I think maybe the best way for us to get across what we're talking about here would be to go all in from the start and do a demo. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So let me share my screen and
what could possibly go wrong?
Get started. Exactly, yeah. All right, so I see you can see my screen. So I've been a fan of the OpenShift console for many years, and it does bring a very nice user experience on top of Kubernetes and OpenShift. But one of the things that I always wanted was to really be able to push it even further and have some custom things appear on the console. So I've been creating some web apps for OpenShift and stuff like that. And finally, we have a way to bring whatever content we want into OpenShift, and Serena will walk us a bit more through how things got there. But so here I have my OpenShift console. As you can see, the administrator perspective. These are the traditional tabs that we know, but here you can see I have something called my custom plugins, which is something that I added a few days ago. And basically, I can put in there new links that take us to whatever content we want to put in there. So here, for instance, I have had a crazy idea of having like a 360 view of my current application, and basically go to Argo City, pull content from there, and also go to GitHub and maybe pull some GitHub issues regarding the application, etc. So as you can see here, this is directly interrogating the GitHub API and putting data and surfacing that data into the OpenShift console in that section. I have another example. So all of these are, just crazy ideas that came out of my brain, but basically you can do whatever you want. So here, for instance, we have an ACS security tab, and basically for the current images, it's going to pull the security results from our ACS tool, the Advanced Cluster Security for Kubernetes, which does provide security scans and a lot more features on top of that, and surface those results in the OpenShift namespace or in the OpenShift console here. So that's a second plugin. And a third example, which is closer to something that I've been hearing customers wanting to do, which is basically how do I onboard my developers with our custom content. So basically, we have our documentation. You're a Java developer or you're a Node developer. You don't really know where to start. And we wanted to have some guided walkthrough of this is how you start. So go read these things first and get familiar with our way of developing our applications and deploying them, etc. So we had this crazy idea where we would come up with something that is called, I would say, design patterns. This is more general than that, but basically we said, what if we can document our content somewhere? So, and that somewhere here is in GitHub, and come up with like a structured approach where basically we say, this is the title of our pattern of our guided walkthrough. We have an overall description, we have an architecture, and we have like a nice architecture diagram. What if we could surface that into OpenShift UI itself in a dynamic way? And that's basically what happens when we go here. So I have those patterns that appear in the console, and this is live data from GitHub. So basically, this plugin pulls the content from GitHub and shows it here. And when I go into the details of a specific pattern, it transforms what you see here in Markdown into a guided approach where I see basically I have the overview, then I go to the architecture, the guiding principles, and then the architecture diagram. So basically, our customers can use a similar approach where they document the developer onboarding, and they say, so first you do this, and then you read this diagram, and then you go to this wiki page, etc. But instead of having all of that content outside of OpenShift, it can now land within.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's inside. It's easier to access, and it can be interactive. So next step here, for example, if we have anything that we want to deploy, we can imagine that we have a deploy to OpenShift button here. And so I already started crafting some stuff like that. And it's going to, as soon as you hit the finish button, it's going to deploy whatever assets you had for that guided approach into the OpenShift namespaces. So it makes it even more interactive, and it's not just documentation. It can be something that actually does things within OpenShift itself.
So just to verify, this is allowing you created the plugin. Now anybody can go into that Git repo,
Yeah,
change it there, and it's going to update here, right? So like
exactly. Yeah. And so just to show you that, so let's try that actually. So I'm going to create a new file, but I'm going to get the content first from one of those patterns here. And I'm going to add a new pattern that we will call the level up hour. Okay, and we will call it levelup.md and put our content in there. But instead of this supply chain, we will call it the level up our pattern, for instance, and commit our changes there. So now we have 6 patterns, and let's try to reload actually the page and see what happens. So, of course, this is a POC, so it still needs some improvement in terms of performance, but there it is. I already have my new pattern that has been pulled from GitHub, and if I go there, I get whatever sections I put in there. So very easy way to document your approach and have that lively surfaced into the OpenShift console.
Well, so I love this particular demo here because, you think about OpenShift as your plumbing essentially, right? And then having the documentation live somewhere else now means there's 2 places that somebody that you're trying to onboard has to understand and use. And so now the documentation lives inside the plumbing, but in fact, the documentation is actually part of the plumbing. So this is actually a really interesting thing from a sort of a management perspective, because it is a means by which you can get everybody on the same page, that there's conventions that everybody follows, and you're making it easy for people to do the thing you want them to do and for it to be clear about how they're supposed to be working here. And so it's a great example. And so I guess I'm sort of curious more broadly about what are some of the other kinds of things that are getting used here with dynamic plugins.
Yeah, sure. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here, and hopefully Serena can give us a more, I would say, background on how these things happened. And
Yeah, I can go into just a quick bit of history as to why we started with the dynamic plugin piece. If we think back to OpenShift 3, right, there was a lot of demand for customization of the console itself. And what we ended up seeing was oftentimes customers would really want to customize it so badly that they would do it even if there was not a supported way to do so. They would do it in an unsupported way. And what would happen is the next release, there was issues because those capabilities were no longer there. We had changed things. So I want to say maybe in 2019, Ali Mobram is my counterpart. He's the product manager for the OpenShift console on the admin side and was one of the initial people who really wanted to push dynamic plugins. So we started talking back then about what we could do for a customization story or extension story. And at that point, we talked about having the ability for CRDs, which is static customization of pre-identified areas of the console. And then we talked about having OLM descriptors, which is the metadata-driven UI generation for OLM pieces. And then at that point, we were talking about having Red Hat native plugins, which were considered static plugins, which allowed us to have plugins inside of the console for our own operators. So you've seen that today or pre-410 with pieces like OpenShift serverless or OpenShift pipelines, where those operators are installed, and we would extend or unlock pieces of the UI or experiences in the UI for those operators, which was great. But then what we saw a couple of things internally was that as serverless or pipelines operator was released, it was not at the same cadence as the OpenShift console was released. So we couldn't always take advantage of the new features of an operator because it was a static plugin that lived inside of the console. So then we started thinking about dynamic plugins. How could we do that? And there's a great team of engineers who helped work on this. And this really opens the door for not only internal Red Hat products and features, but also for our ISVs and customers to take advantage of this, right? So in 410, this is really the place where we're saying, hey, customers, this is now available. We still have a limited set of customizations, I would say, but we think they're fairly strong. It's definitely a valid set. We are looking for input to see, hey, if you have some use cases that we don't know about, please contact myself or Ali Mobram, and we can put some things on the backlog, so with RFE features. But that's kind of how we got here. I think, I am typically talking to customers more around the developer side, and what I hear very frequently is that people want a developer portal, a single pane of glass that they go for everything, whether it's their, like Jafar was showing, their onboarding, all of their resources, any tools that they need to get to, and how could they do that? And we really see dynamic plugins as a really great resource for customers to be able to customize their console as well as in a supported manner, right?
Yeah.
So they don't lose those customizations.
It's almost like your IDE writ large. It's like OpenShift plus every other asset you might potentially need as a developer working in this environment could potentially be there, right? Or at least that would be the ambition.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I used to call it the 360 view of our SDLC, the software developer lifecycle, where basically you can pull data from your issues, from your tests, from your pipelines, from your whatever information from your user stories, from your Git repo in terms of Git commits to know what exactly has been pushed, etc. So yeah, you can be. I mean, the imagination is the limit there, where basically, what's the data that you need to be efficient as a developer, and then just pull the data together and surface it to your users.
Yeah. There's a couple other pieces I think that are kind of neat too, is that since our console is utilizing Patternfly, right? A lot of what I saw you do, you look like you were using the Patternfly wizard, for example. So if you're using the customization points and use Patternfly, it's another way to keep that single pane of glass looking consistent throughout the product, which is great. So yeah, we definitely those are some of our suggestions, right? Use the Patternfly components as well. We're also introducing the dark mode in 4.11. And so if you're using those Patternfly components, and if you're not overwriting CSS, you would also, with your customizations, if you're using our typical components, you'd also get that support for when you change back and forth from light to dark to be supported without extra work.
Yeah. I found those components really, really useful because you don't have to basically recreate your own UI components, and it still looks exactly the same as the console because those are the components we use natively for our development. One of the things I liked also is all of the primitives we provide in terms of SDK.
Mhm.
So, for instance, if you want to show things like pods or services or whatever Kubernetes resources you have in OpenShift, the console plugin provides an SDK that allows you to say, give me all the pods, give me all the services in a two-liner, and you don't have to write crazy API queries to OpenShift to get that data. So there are like very nice accelerators that you can use. We have also reusable components like I want to display this type of items in a list, and then you just use that component. So those are all React based components, and it makes it very easy to get the data from OpenShift and structure it in a nice way in the UI. So
Yeah. You showed a really interesting one where if I'm not mistaken, you added a navigation item that had children, so sub-nav items inside of the admin's perspective, right?
exactly,
But
yeah,
we also want to make sure people realize that they can also do that in the developer perspective. They
exactly,
can also create their own perspective. So if
yeah,
they have like a unique perspective that they want to provide for people, that's also really cool, right? Because that's one thing that we do here around OpenShift console today is like, other than a cluster admin, why would I go to dev versus admin, right? And like, what's there? And I'm just missing one page here or one page there. And how do I combine that? This is really a nice way, again, to create a customized nav item. Customized perspective that might be for like DevOps or DevSecOps or something like that. If you really have specific use cases that you want to have just for specific users.
yeah. That's to me it really opens up new perspectives. So
Yep.
you
Good
can
fun.
really, yeah. So you can combine data from different sources, either from OpenShift or even from external tools, and it makes it really accessible. And I think we can also do crazy things like when you right click on the developer console, you have new action items that you can create, and then they take you to a specific custom page that you have created. So it can really become a very customized experience on top of the console, except that those things are not within the console code. They live aside, and they are loaded on demand when we activate the plugins.
You
So,
want to talk a little about that a little bit? Like how do you activate your plugin? Do you have to create an operator to do that? Like, do you want to
oh,
share a little bit about that?
yeah, sure. So maybe we can have a look at some code samples before, so it will make it easier to even follow the conversation. So, yeah, let me reshare my screen. All right. So this page here is so we do provide a GitHub repo that you can use as a starter to create your own plugins. And again, the goal is to make anyone be able to create his own plugin very easily. So keep in mind that I'm absolutely not a developer. I don't know anything about React except what I learned, by reading some documentation and stuff like that. So I don't consider myself as a developer, and I've been able to like create those plugins in few days, so in even few hours for some of them. So we do provide that GitHub repo that allows you to build your plugin on top of that. And the way it works is basically, so it's React JS code. So you're going to design components. And here to get started, we have an example page. So basically it says, we are going to create a component called example page. And whenever we load that plugin, it's going to load that HTML code in the main page that you are displaying. So very straightforward, okay? My example page is the name of the component that we are going to display. So how do I now add that to the navigation items? So again, if we go to the root of our project, we have something called console extensions, all right? And so these are all standardized things. So all you have to do is copy paste these things and then add whatever items you want. So this one says, we are going to add a navigation item called plugin example to the admin perspective here. And it's going to take us to the /example route. And the /example route takes us to the example page component that we defined earlier. So very straightforward. You create your React component and you define your navigation items in the OpenShift console. Very easy to do. And now if you want to, so this is something that you can, so what I liked also is that they created something very easy for a developer to get started. So if you wanted to basically have the code running in your IDE, make changes, all you have to do is like yarn run. I mean, install the components and start the server locally. But you can also run a local console that talks to the remote OpenShift cluster, but whatever changes you make to your code are live in your own development environment. So it makes it very easy to iterate. And so actually, let me try and load one of those examples and show you basically how you can quickly iterate and have that developer experience for your plugin. Does it make sense for us, or?
I think it's great. Yeah.
Works
All right.
for me.
Try
Yeah,
it.
let's do that.
Risky.
Yeah, always let's go for crazy demos and see whatever works or fails.
Yeah.
So I see now that I have my my IDE here. So basically VS Code. We have let's say our design patterns here. And if I go to my, so this is the one that is loaded on a remote cluster, okay? You see that it's the Red Hat flavor of it. But now I have also an instance running locally for my development console using OKD, which is the upstream version of it, because that's how you do the development. You're going to use the like an upstream component, and I see my plugins here. But let's just do a quick change here. So for example, OpenShift design patterns here. I'm just going to change this header here and reload the UI. Okay. So let's say the level up hour, as I like to call it. Now let's go back, and if it worked, I see that I have my live reload in here. So as a developer, it's very easy to iterate locally. Also, although I'm connected to a remote cluster, like this is a fully working console that runs locally, but that connects to a remote cluster to get the data from there. So I can test my plugin, I can iterate over my development, etc. And once I'm satisfied with my plugin, it's now time to build it and ship it to the cluster. Does it make sense? So first you are going to do your plugin development locally using this plugin starter that we provide. It's very easy to kickstart. And so what this does is, as you can see here, you have the yarn run start console. It's running a local console as a container on your development workstation. And once you are done with it, it's time to push the plugin to the remote OpenShift cluster. And that's how it works. So basically, you have to build a container image out of your repo. So there's a sample Docker file in the repo. So all you have to do is something like podman build, and it's going to build your container image, then push it to a remote repository. So for instance, quay.io. And then you have a template here that allows you to deploy your container that contains your plugin code to OpenShift itself, to a specific namespace that you are going to provide here. So once you do that, all you have to do is patch the console operator here by saying, I want to load my specific plugin called my plugin here. And once you do that, you're going to have a pop-up on the OpenShift console that says, there's a new plugin that has been activated. Do you want to refresh the console? And then it's going to appear on the OpenShift console on the cluster. So very straightforward. And just to show you what allows us to have that in the remote cluster is basically, I have a namespace called console plugin template here, to which I have deployed the container image that has my basically my code in it. And this is dynamically loaded by the OpenShift console. So I have my plugin here, and the OpenShift console is pointing to that container to dynamically load the content from it. So very straightforward, very well architected. So very, very good job, guys, in terms of engineering, because this doesn't go within the console code. As you said, Serena, one of the key questions was, how do I have separate life cycles?
Yes.
So we have the console life cycle, but if you guys want to iterate and create a new plugin every day, we don't want to constrain you by our own build cadence.
Exactly.
So that's amazing, because now you can load your plugins and iterate as many times as you want. And it can also, open up the doors to some crazy ideas, like maybe a plugin marketplace or something like that.
Yeah.
Where our partners can ship their own plugins in there, and then you can decide to load those
Yeah,
plugins.
there's been some really
Oh, that's
innovative
something.
ideas. I mean, I know, like you've done one here. I know we've got Mario Laureato is trying to do one, I think, for Code Ready Workspaces. There's a couple of internal folks who are really trying to work on and push some of these dynamic plugin pieces. So I think that's great, being able to showcase that, for sure. The other thing that is, kind of interesting to think about is, previously, when we had those static plugins, I think that was for us, was one of the biggest hurdles, was, like you just mentioned, not being able to have the same release cadence, right? So one of the things we're thinking about internally is, could we even have like the developer perspective or the admin perspective be its own plugin, so that we can release the console quicker?
Yeah.
And that's like a conversation that we're having internally, but it's again, it's like, how do we get some of the, how are we able to iterate more quickly on the console itself? Not necessarily new features that we need from inside from Kubernetes or from other areas, but just really just the user experience, which is kind of an exciting topic as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, while I was creating the plugins, I actually referred back to the Dev Console plugin itself
Yeah.
to see
Okay.
how things are done, and
Yeah.
just to get familiar with it. So yeah, I think it's really awesome to have applied that also to the console itself.
Yeah. Yeah, we should give a shout out to, I did not mention KubeVirt/CNV, right? Their team was also, it's been that team, the developer perspective and admin perspective team that's really worked hard, I think, on getting these perspectives. I mean, the plugin implemented. So they've done a great job at doing that. And I'm just going to mention again, if people have additional use cases for extensions that they're interested in, please feel free to reach out by either creating an RFE or connecting with myself.
So do we expect that as we have new adopters of OpenShift, that this is going to be part of what we encourage them to do, to really sort of think outside of just what OpenShift itself is, and really in a larger sense about how their development teams are working and the kinds of resources and assets and other kinds of tooling that they might want to integrate? Is that going to be part of our story to new adopters?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, yes. And I've been a PM here. I used to be UX lead for the dev experience stuff. I've been PM here now for a couple of years. And that's something I'm consistently hearing is people asking, current customers asking, how do we do this? So we were pushing the CRDs in the beginning. Now I think this dynamic plugin mechanism is a great one. And, we hear of other competitive features or products that are solving some of the similar use cases. And I think, that's also an interesting topic if we want to get into that.
Well, just let me follow up with another question too. So this is a 4.10 feature, right? Mm-hmm. So within 4.10, just for clarity's sake, is this a tech preview feature or is it a fully supported feature?
We are saying it's tech preview because we know that there's other extensions that are going to be looked for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
But I don't want to say it's not fully supported. It's not GA. The reason preview, though,
okay. Yeah, let's rephrase that how you want to rephrase
that larger level of use cases that external people might want.
Right. And so what do you see as sort of the roadmap ahead with dynamic plugins and sort of how you think they'll be evolving in the near and maybe midterm?
Honestly, it's just, again, satisfying all of the internal use cases that we have from our current operators that we have at Red Hat, as well as working with customers to find out what's missing.
Well, that's great.
And then just solidifying it, right? Making sure that everything's, I mean, we already do know that it's tested, but like continuing to test things and validate.
Yeah, and so I've been on the field for many years as an OpenShift solution architect, and really that was a topic that came many times where we even had a group of customers in France who wanted to get together to build their own, like, oh, this is what we want to do with OpenShift, and we want to be able to see this and that and this and that. And so now basically they can say, okay, let's get together and let's create a plugin that solves those issues and publish it, and then they can all benefit from that. So
right. Yeah, I think like one area, I'll give an example. I think one of the areas that we might want to do additional extensions is a topology view, for example, right? We have some levels there, but it's really going to be interesting to see, do customers actually, or I see, partners, is that an area that they do want to customize, or do we have enough there? We already have, I'm pretty sure, the ability to do on like the project dashboard or the cluster overview dashboard. I think we have the ability to add a card already, right? So, it's just finding out what are those additional use cases that we're not currently satisfying that we can just continue to make that more feature rich.
Sure. And so something that I haven't shown, but that is actually implemented is not only you can create your own pages for your plugins, etc., but you can also augment what's already in the console with the new navigation items. So for instance, let me see if I have an example somewhere here. I think I did something like that for image streams. But basically, you can add your own tabs. Yeah, let me share my screen just very quickly and to show you what this looks like. So can you see my screen now?
Yes.
All right. So remember the ACS security that we saw here,
Yeah.
right? So this is like a main page in the plugins section. But what if you wanted, for instance, to add some extensions to a very specific item? So, for example, we're going to take image streams here, and basically you can add your own content in here. So these tabs are the ones that come out of the box with OpenShift. But now, say, okay, we have the scan results from our external tool.
Mhm.
What if we added a tab that shows basically the scan results to the same item, but not in a separate page, but in a separate tab for a specific item here?
Right.
So it's really, I mean, there's a lot of extension points where we can, be creative and add stuff as we see fit. So again, I have added here this Argo CD
Nice.
tabs that show, up data coming from Argo CD, but adds that to the deployments sections. So yeah, I really like the all of the extension points that you guys thought of, and it's not just like a very basic thing. You can do sophisticated combinations also.
One of the more complicated ones I think that we've heard in the past is how does a customer provide a mechanism to hide our create project, but then provide a create project or a request mechanism
Mhm.
so that they can fill in information like what's their cost center, et cetera, what's the information about them, what's their project,
Yeah.
and then the project actually gets created with that metadata.
Yeah.
Understanding more of those use cases would be really helpful for us for that extension point, because at this point, that's one that we're missing.
Yeah. So people have been doing that in external tools like
Yes.
ticketing system. So they open up a ticketing system and they say, okay, blah blah blah. This is my project. This is the deadline. This is the quota that I need, etc. And then you have to create complex API or integrations between that external tool and OpenShift to be able to trigger the creation of those like namespaces or applications, etc.
Mhm.
But now, yeah, you can do that and have an integrated experience where basically they just go to that specific form and then they hit request namespace. And internally, it's easier to develop because, as I said, we have the SDK
Right.
that says, okay, so you want to create a namespace. There's a function called create namespace already, just, or you want to create a pod. Okay, we have something that says create pods, and you don't have to write like 20 lines of code to be able to create the namespace. You just give it the metadata that you get from the form and it gets created. So
Yeah.
it's really easier to tailor the UX, the user experience, and to actually code that within the plugin itself. So
Yeah. I mean, this whole topic is really interesting because we do work with a number of customers who might even have, I mean, I know a couple of them actually have their own user experience department who are
Yeah.
talking about how do they customize the console so that it fits for their use cases, right? So I think this is the dynamic plugins is really a game changer for those people,
absolutely.
It should make the process, we're hoping that makes that process much quicker and easier for the developer, and also for any designers who are helping them. They've already got the pattern fly components and all that, and they've got a lot of guidelines already instilled in just this mechanism, the dynamic plugin mechanism itself.
Sure. Yep. So I was really excited about this feature, and it delivered its promise. So
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, and I know we're doing a set of blogs around dynamic plugins, right? So Ali and I think we might have the link there available for you, but we had an initial blog come out. But I think what we're trying to do is get some in-house people to create some demos and with different plugins, and then really blog about those and show how those can be utilized.
yeah, sure. And so actually, I'm gonna be blogging about this feature too.
Yeah.
So basically, a sort of getting started with the plugins and having a user guide from a customer perspective. How should I create things? What are some of the tips that we can provide them to get started, etc.
So you had mentioned, Serena, that you wanted to get input from users and from customers about their particular use cases and things they'd be interested in.
Mhm.
What's the best way for them to provide that sort of input or RFE?
So the official one would be to create a JIRA against OpenShift OCP, which is of type RFE. Alternatively, you could send myself an email, which is serena@redhat.com. I don't remember Ali's offhand, so I'm not going to give his. But I think either one of those mechanisms is great. Inside some of the blogs as well, we do have links with CTAs to be able to do some of that stuff.
Okay.
But I would say let the RFE process or contacting me directly, because either way we'll end up connecting, is the best way to get that on our backlog.
Great. Well, so anything else we wanted to cover here on the subject of dynamic plugins, which is actually kind of blowing my mind. I mean, that the possibilities that it opens up are really pretty amazing. Any further thoughts? Jafar.
Yeah.
I've never known you not to have further thoughts. This is
Yeah. I mean, what I'd love to see again, as I mentioned, is to have this ability to have like an ecosystem of partners created around this. So we know that there are already some traction around similar projects in the CNCF. So with this notion of a plugin hub or stuff like that. And what I want actually is what I'd like. I mean, is to have a marketplace of plugins to which anyone can participate, and then as an OpenShift user, you can just go ahead and say, okay, I like this plugin, install it, and it deploys whatever it needs in the background. Like, so of course you need to be an admin to do that, but it can create like the containers, create the namespaces, activate the plugin, and you can get started very quickly.
I think that would be really interesting to look into. I don't know if you guys remember, but like back in, I think it was October or December of 2020, we used to have like an OpenShift developer experience on show on OpenShift TV, and what Ali and I did was a console customization competition.
Yeah.
And we ended up having a Git repo where a bunch of people put in their like sample customizations, but this is a step further where it's really building a community around that. So that's something we should definitely look into.
I don't know. I think actually the competition sounds like a good thing to revisit.
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah.
Yep. So I have some ideas I can share with you, Serena, afterwards.
Perfect. Okay.
So one additional question from me. So we've talked a lot about sort of the customer use cases and interest there, but we've also alluded to partners and so on. And in particular, I guess I'm curious about sort of interest from the ISVs, because I start thinking about sort of the potential for some of them to be interested in this. Is that something we're looking at and seeing interest in?
There's definitely some interest for sure. And I think some of our current operators, if they wanted to if they wanted to take that extra step, the experience could be even, obviously more integrated, more seamless by extending the UI with some of their capabilities. Yeah. I think that, the sky's kind of the limit with dynamic plugins, especially for these people who are already creating operators.
Right. All right.
Yeah, but again, you don't need an operator to be able to have the plugin. I mean, it can be deployed very easily, because creating an operator is a task on the
Agreed.
I mean, you have to get familiar with all of the things that needs to be done around the content itself. Although we do provide like the operator SDKs and stuff like that, but if the goal is just to create a simple plugin that does things outside, just remember that they can do that. And remember, guys, that you can do that without the operator.
Right. Well, it doesn't require an operator, but it's intriguing to think about, if you are creating operators, how do you use the dynamic plugin to enhance that
Right. That's the thing,
right?
when you were saying ISV and partners, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing, is it starts
operators that are already available through the marketplace or through Operator Hub. And if they wanted to take advantage of this dynamic plugin, and I have a couple ideas in my mind, but I'm not going to say them because I haven't specifically spoken to those companies. But I think that we could do some very cool things.
Right.
So.
Agreed.
Well, and I think part of it is also not to be overwhelmed with the possibilities this early on in this particular endeavor, because it looks so inviting. The possibilities in terms of the developer experience, the possibilities in terms of how to extend the functionality of operators, the possibilities for ISVs and sort of their customer experience of their product running on OpenShift. I mean, the mind races about how many different kinds of things this could potentially touch.
I have one more question for you, Jafar. Have you tried doing anything around like RBAC pieces? So, you know what I mean? So like maybe you're going to create, because the dynamic plugin mechanism, from what I understand, we can do something just for the cluster admin, but we could also expose things for everybody, right?
Yeah. So my understanding is that in the back office, it uses the OpenShift RBAC mechanism. So if you're not allowed to create pods, so you won't be able to create pods either, although if you have something exposed there. I haven't played with the RBAC, but that's definitely one of the things that I'll be looking at, because I mean, it's an important topic to be able to maybe, not show things when they are not allowed to do that anyway.
Right. Because we talked about like this new perspective, right? Like, what if you had a new perspective for certain roles, right? That as a developer, I wouldn't see.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Like today, what we do is the developer perspective and admin perspective are always there, but we hide some of those nav items. The possibility could be, could you create a perspective that's only shown if you have specific rates? That would also
and I would, I mean, that's definitely something to look at. And I would even push it a bit further when you said that we have some customers who work with their design teams to make OpenShift fully integrated into their own portals. So how crazy would it be to like totally hide the developer and admin perspectives and just have like the one custom perspective that they want?
Right.
Does it make sense also at some point, or for a specific type of users? Is it something?
And that's a great question. And those are some of those requirements we want to understand.
Yeah, because then they can just go to that page directly, and they don't have that admin or developer. They have my company, Acme company, and that's all they see.
Yeah. We've also done lately, I want to say in 4.8, we introduced user preferences, for example, where we say, what's your default perspective? Those are some of those, like those are some of the areas that we haven't thought through. If you add another perspective, is it then available in user preferences? And you know what? Maybe the dynamic plugin team has thought through it, and I just haven't talked to them about it. Oh, yeah. Like some of those areas are areas we need to dig in a little bit deeper, I think.
Yeah. So definitely the RBAC thing is taken care of, because when you run the console, you have, um, I mean, you can run it using the authentication, and then whatever you see is only the things that you are allowed to see with your user,
Right.
in terms of resources. But like showing perspectives or not, depending on a role, this isn't something that I have looked at. But
Yeah. Somebody's asking about, hopefully this can't be abused to show things they shouldn't be able to see either.
yeah, no, definitely not, because again, it's using the RBAC, the OpenShift RBAC, natively. So it's definitely, no, they won't be able to see things that they are not allowed to, because it's using the credentials that you are logged in with to make the queries.
I think the difference could possibly be, could you go to a page and it will be empty because you don't have access, versus that nav item being hidden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be the differentiation. That might be the experience that's different.
Yeah, well, we already have something like that. So, for example, when you are logged in as a non-admin and you go to the operator hub page, and you don't have, so it says restricted access, but it's not like a blank page. We have some clear messaging that says you are not an admin. So there are already some mechanism in the console to do that. But yeah, we need to see how easy it is to be done with a custom plugin.
Yeah.
If you see a blank page, you're supposed to see a blank page.
Exactly. All right. So thank you very much, Serena. It was really a pleasure having you here, and thanks to you guys and the engineering teams to provide this awesome feature, because I'm sure all of our OpenShift customers will be delighted to play with it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I know Ollie wishes he was here, but he's in the West Coast, so it's a little early for him. And shout out to him, as well as like Sam Paget and a number of the engineers on the UI dev side. They've done a great job with this work. Thanks for having me.
This is really remarkable stuff. And thank you again for joining us today. This has been incredibly informative. And so I think that brings us to the end of this episode of the Level Up Hour. Again, everybody remember to like, subscribe, and share so that people know we're here. We'll be back in 2 weeks. And so perhaps we'll be joined by Scott, who's Follow just showed up, and mine and Jafar's and everybody else. But anyway, thank you for joining us today. Thanks again, Serena. Thank you, Jafar. I'm Randy Russell, and have a great day wherever you are.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.